The United States, the largest nation in North America, likes to see itself as a symbol of freedom, opportunity, and relentless innovation. A powerhouse economy, cultural influence that spans the globe, and a flag we're taught to honor from childhood. But what if those stars and stripes we salute were stitched through with the muted cries of 14-year-old girls, standing on wet sidewalks, bargaining away their childhood just to make it through the night? HUD's 2024 report estimates that more than 303,000 women experience homelessness every year, and a staggering 90% of them carry the trauma of sexual or physical abuse. Escaping that violence makes them 4 times more likely to end up without a home than women who, by some luck, never lived that nightmare. It's deeply unsettling, isn't it? And far too many of them are cornered into impossible choices just to survive one more day. Some exchange their safety for a couch or a locked door. Others slip into the places we don't like to talk about, trading intimacy for one more night inside or a meal they can't otherwise afford. Among homeless teens, 1 in 4 swaps sex for the basics, a roof, food, or protection, often starting as young as 14. In a country as wealthy as the United States, it's gut-wrenching to accept that tens of thousands of women lie down on frozen sidewalks in rusted cars or beneath highway overpasses night after night. This isn't just a story about being down on your luck. It's about our shared humanity, the cracks in our systems, and a quiet war being fought in plain sight, one that ultimately calls on us to care. When we talk about prostitution in America, we're not just glancing at some illicit underground economy. We're staring into a gaping social wound that demands understanding, not finger-pointing, but genuine compassion and a burning desire for real change. These women are not faceless stats. They are mothers clutching fading dreams, daughters whose laughter once lit up rooms, sisters who held steady jobs, raised families, and built futures they believed in. Then life, merciless and indifferent, veers off course, and the system, slow, underfunded, and often blind, shows up late, if it appears at all, leaving them adrift in the cold. In this piece, we're going to strip back the layers and confront the unvarnished reality faced by so many homeless women in America, and by extension, those who are homeless in America more broadly, the perilous road that leads them into survival sex work, where every transaction wears down the soul a little more. Through their voices and lived experiences, we'll dig into the tangled roots of homelessness, examine the indifference that lets it fester, and map out the ruthless cycle that keeps countless women locked in its grip. Above all, this writing will throw some tough questions at you, challenging you to acknowledge the crisis unfolding right under our noses, a crisis we can't afford to keep pretending away. Because ignoring it doesn't make it disappear, it just pushes the pain further into the dark. This is not a trickle, it's a rising tide. The number of newly homeless women has climbed to more than 52,000, many of them running from the shadows of domestic violence that chased them right out of their homes. Roughly 38% of women who've been abused end up on the streets at some point. And it's not affecting all women equally. Black women bear a disproportionate share of the burden, making up about 32% of those, counted in frigid January tallies. Their stories written into the winter streets of places like Chicago, Detroit, and Baltimore. The hard truth is that many of these women don't enter prostitution by choice, but out of sheer desperation when their pockets are empty, there's nowhere safe to sleep, and what little social safety net exists feels out of reach. Survival sex, trading their bodies for food, shelter, or to pay off a debt, becomes the toll they pay simply to stay alive. Study after study records significant rates from around 16% up to nearly 40%, depending on the group surveyed of people who have experienced homelessness, engaging in such exchanges, with rates especially high among youth and those who've been out on the streets the longest. To really understand this heartbreak, we have to dig deeper back into childhood trauma and systemic neglect, where hurt spreads like weeds through cracked concrete. 90% of homeless women have suffered physical or sexual violence. That's not a side note, it's the foundation shoving them toward instability with a force that's both personal and merciless. Layer on addiction, chronic illness, disability, or a job market that slams doors on anyone with gaps in their resume, or a criminal record, and you get a perfect storm. Homelessness becomes a gateway to exploitation and trafficking, where unstable housing is the bait predators use to reel women in. Domestic violence and prior sexual abuse carve out a direct path to both homelessness and coerced sex for survival, a link that's reinforced in report after report on intimate partner violence and housing instability. So when we talk about the sex industry tied to people who are homeless in America, we have to draw clear distinctions between consensual sex work exploitation and trafficking, because there are those who ruthlessly profit off the cracks in the system. It forces a hard question. Are we really going to punish people for being poor and traumatized, or are we finally going to build real exits? If we provided immediate safe housing and support for these women, how many would no longer feel pressured to trade their dignity for one more night indoors? The reality is that turning to prostitution often comes packaged with severe health risks, repeated violence, and enormous obstacles to leaving. That's why the solution can't be reduced to arguments about legalization or criminalization alone. It has to include housing, trauma-informed mental health care addiction, treatment, and genuine pathways to employment. And the current support, tragically thin. Discriminatory housing practices, a threadbare mental health system, and limited services turn potential escape routes into mirages on the horizon. People say survival has a price. For many homeless women in America, that price is their body, their sense of self, and far too often their life. The line between staying alive and losing yourself completely is razor thin. When your last remaining currency is your own safety, how many real choices do you actually have? The toll is staggering. Research shows that homeless women involved in prostitution face an HIV risk more than 11 times higher than the general population. When hunger sets in, the risk of violence from clients almost doubles and needle sharing spikes by more than twofold, tightening a deadly loop of harm and survival. Behind those numbers are women who haven't eaten properly in days, who bargain away safety for a bed, and who learn to sleep lightly, always ready to run. and the damage extends far beyond the body. Around 2/3 live with PTSD, reliving their trauma in endless sleepless cycles. Addiction often follows not as a moral failure, but as a numbing tool against unbearable memories, with up to 95 and 99% reporting dependence on alcohol or drugs. How do you rebuild a life when the very things that help you cope are slowly destroying you? Society rarely offers forgiveness. After an arrest, roughly half of women leaving prison have nowhere to go. Many end up right back on the streets and back in the same cycle because the system never gives them a stable alternative. They're punished twice, once by the law and again by institutions that refuse to see their pain as human. It's devastating to realize that some of these stories start in childhood. One report described a 12-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted repeatedly before being pushed back onto the streets. So who carries the blame? The young woman doing what she must to survive, or the world that backed her into a corner with no other visible option? This isn't just about morality, it's about mercy. It's about a society that punishes the broken instead of healing them. And yet, even in the darkest corners, slivers of hope remain. There are programs, safe houses, and people who still believe that even the most shattered lives can be pieced back together. They're not enough yet, but they remind us of what's possible if we truly decide to show up for those who are homeless in America, and especially for the women who've been carrying this burden in silence for far too long. She doesn't need more shame piled onto her shoulders. She needs someone willing to listen, to believe she can change, and to offer her a real second chance. In the end, change doesn't begin only with policies or nonprofits. It starts with individuals, people who refuse to look away. So ask yourself this: if you saw a woman trying to sleep on a park bench in the dead of winter, what would you do? Your small act of empathy, a blanket, a call for help, even a kind word might be the only thing that convinces her there's still a place for hope in this world. Government has a crucial role to play expanding affordable housing programs, offering free or low-cost trauma-informed counseling, and building vocational training that's designed specifically with homeless women in mind, flexible, supportive, and realistic. At the same time, we as a society have to unlearn our instinct to condemn. A woman's past does not determine her worth. Robin, 36, from Philadelphia, once had 2 children and a small place to call home. But her childhood was stamped with violence and betrayal. Her father was a predator, and her mother worked herself into the ground just to keep the lights on. Those early scars never really faded. They followed her like a shadow into every corner of her adult life. Bit by bit, things began to crumble. She lost custody of her kids. One now lives with their father, and the other she placed for adoption because she couldn't stand the thought of her child growing up on the streets. She barely speaks to her mother these days, afraid that seeing what she's become would break her heart all over again. Now Robin drifts through Kensington, one of Philadelphia's most devastated neighborhoods, where every day hundreds of people battling addiction and homelessness gather just to make it through. She's hooked on heroin and crack a slide that started with prescription painkillers after an injury and spiraled into something far bigger than she could control. "I lost everything, my kids, my boyfriend, my family, and myself," she says softly. When the money runs dry, Robin turns to sex work to scrape together enough for her next hit. "It's the worst thing I've ever done, but it keeps me alive," she confesses. Most nights she works under cover of darkness, hoping the shadows will hide her from curious eyes. She's been robbed more times than she can count, beaten and assaulted by people who saw her as disposable. And yet beneath all the damage, something deeply human still glows faintly. "I just want to be normal again," she whispers. It's such a simple wish. But for a woman like Robin, one of countless women who are homeless in America, that dream can feel more distant than any high further away than any street she's ever walked. There is no easy path out of poverty, addiction, and despair. But hope isn't gone. It lives in open hands and late-night hotline calls, in the quiet work of people and organizations that fight to save one life at a time. Stable housing is the first key that unlocks the door out of this vicious cycle. Because honestly, how can anyone plan for tomorrow when they don't even know where they'll sleep tonight? Across the country, local organizations have become havens of compassion. The Chicago Coalition for the Homeless doesn't just offer temporary shelter. It also walks alongside women as they battle addiction, rebuild their self-worth, and search for new opportunities to start again. The Safe House Project focuses on survivors of trafficking women who were deceived, exploited, and deeply wounded, now slowly reclaiming their voices and their sense of self. These efforts prove something powerful when society invests in people. We don't just rescue a life, we recover a future. On a national level, programs like Covenant House give protection, shelter, and guidance to homeless youth across the United States, many of whom were just one bad break away from the streets. The Polaris Project works relentlessly to expose and dismantle trafficking networks that profit off the suffering of those who are homeless in America and at extreme risk. And when someone needs urgent help and doesn't know where to turn, the National Human Trafficking Hotline is there 24 hours a day, every day, listening without judgment and without stigma. But we still have to ask, are these efforts enough? Can we really address the roots of this crisis if women still can't find affordable housing, steady work, or access to mental health care that actually meets their needs? Maybe the answer starts with how we see them. Society has to begin viewing survival sex work not as a moral failing, but as a desperate response to impossible conditions. No woman chooses that road if she has a safe, stable place to go back to. Cold statistics counts of people without homes, families losing shelter, an 18% nationwide jump in recent years can never stand in for the voices behind them. I don't see these women as data points. I see them as people who once had plans, paychecks, and everyday responsibilities until life cornered them into choosing between hunger violence or surviving through desperate means. When I read that homelessness has risen sharply across the United States, driven mostly by soaring rents and fragile safety nets, I can't ignore the reality that many women have felt forced to exchange their bodies for a place to sleep. Researchers call it survival sex. Let's be clear, that's not a lifestyle. It's a reaction to pressure, fear, and scarcity in a country where no one should be left without options. The numbers also tell us something deeply unsettling: sexual assault and abuse sit at the root of many women's paths into homelessness and survival sex work. A large share of unhoused women have trauma or exploitation in their past, often starting in childhood. So it's fair to ask, when we criminalize the people already suffering, are we targeting the right problem or just punishing those failed first by the system? I often wonder what our communities would look like if, instead of judging from a distance, we chose to invest seriously in safe housing, mental health care, and comprehensive housing first programs for everyone who is homeless in America. From where I sit, the current mix, a little criminalization here, a little underfunded social support, there has created a vicious cycle: no housing exposure to violence and exploitation, sex work as a survival tactic, stigma, and exclusion from services. In contrast, approaches grounded in evidence and humanity, housing-first integrated outreach, trauma-informed care have shown real promise in breaking that chain. But they require courage from policymakers and funding that doesn't dry up when the news cycle moves on. Here's a thought that might ruffle feathers. Are we unintentionally punishing victims by focusing on cracking down on sex work instead of protecting the people trapped in it? This is not a moment for silence. It's a call to action. Small practical shifts, from how the media tells these stories to how we prioritize housing budgets to whether we create real livable job opportunities, can literally save lives. So I'll leave you with two questions. As a community, are we truly ready to change how we think and commit to long-term solutions instead of quick fixes? And you personally, what could you do, even something small, to help one woman step out of a world where her only choices are danger or hunger? If our answer shows up not just in words, but in what we actually do, then maybe we can start dismantling this cycle of injustice. I still believe we can. Sitting with everything we've uncovered about homelessness and survival sex work, especially among young women, the numbers feel like distant thunder, but they're really broken lives. More than 1.1 million people were helped by homeless response systems in 2024, with rates climbing nationwide. Behind those stats are girls as young as 14, trading their bodies for food or a bed, women carrying childhood trauma, PTSD, and illness at far higher rates than those safely housed. Yet hope is real. Hotlines, groups like Polaris, local shelters, all are fighting for those who are homeless in America. Change isn't optional anymore, it's a moral responsibility.